Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Quick Fix Fantasy. I am one of your hosts, Chris P, and I can't do this alone, as you've heard me say a billion times. I am here with the one, the only Dr. Doug, who I have not seen in a while, but the season's back, so Dr. Doug and Chris P are back. What's up, Doug? How we doing?
Yeah, it feels nice. The season's back. I can crawl back out of my hole and emerge in front of the camera to talk about fantasy sports. It's exciting. I'm excited for the season this year. I think it's fun. I think the game is fun. I think my original take was that the nostalgia would hit hard for like a day and then it would be boring. But I think I think the maps are fine. I mean, we can get into it more, but I think the game looks, at least watches fun right now. I don't know how it plays. I'll admit I did not purchase the game. I've never played, but
Wow.
this is the maybe only the second one that I've just not. I guess I mean the time will tell. Maybe I'll buy it down the road. But yeah, this is the second Call of Duty ever that I haven't purchased. But after last year, I was just not feeling it. So we'll see. But yeah, I bet I've had a blast watching. Yeah, the rotation tournament last week was really fun. I thought that was like a really great thing, and people streaming at the beginning of the year is always fun. Like the BP, I mean, shout out Easy Mac. BPL has been just absolutely amazing. I think that sort of stuff's needed, and I don't know, lots of fun content for me to watch.
Well, can I guess the other Call of Duty that you didn't buy? I have one guess, and we don't have to get much into it. You didn't buy Infinite Warfare.
No, wait, I loved Infinite Warfare, man.
Really?
But yeah, no, I was a yeah, I that was probably during my like peak college. When was Infinite War? I get AW, IW. I no, actually, Infinite Warfare was what
29.
2016 over 2017. Yeah, that would have been at the end of like when I was going to my PhD. But like, yeah, I played those. I think the one I didn't get was World War II. I didn't buy World War II. It was ironically the one that I got like my start doing like analysis in, but I never had the game. It just didn't look fun from the beginning. I was like, yeah, coming off of some more like advanced Call of Duty. I was like, I don't know, yeah, like boots on the ground would be fun to watch for competitive, but I don't. I was having fun flying around. Like I didn't want to play boots on the ground. So
Very
yeah, no,
underrated. Very underrated
yeah,
Call of Duty. I'm going to tell you,
no,
World War
I
II. The campaign
World
was
War II was
phenomenal too.
amazing.
So,
Yeah, no, a lot of honestly like a lot of nostalgia there for like the old like COD 2s and I don't know, World at War, like I don't know, yeah, you got that like feel again. And it was boots on the ground, you're kind of moving slow, dolphin dive, no slide, like all that was honestly pretty good. Yeah, I don't know if that was the last one I didn't buy.
it's all right. Like we could talk about how much we spend money, on games, but I'd rather talk about how we're going to make money on these games. That was
Indeed.
fucking dynamite. I didn't practice that one. That was good though. But you said after last year, you decided to take a break from purchasing this one. But let's talk about last year a little bit. Obviously, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of changes went on. But looking back now, how was last year for you from an overall fantasy standpoint?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I didn't start right at the beginning of the Call of Duty season like playing PrizePicks and DraftKings as much. And like I think I was pretty vocal on the podcast last year that like I had shifted most of my action to playing PrizePicks by the end. I just think there were a lot more easily exploitable edges on PrizePicks than there were in DraftKings where you're playing against other people who are all really smart, or not all really smart, but like all you need is a few smart ones, and you got to get lucky to win, to hit it big. And so like on Prize Picks, it was just really nice that like as I learned more and more, I could just hammer those edges over and over. I mean, I was vocal at, and I think in our last podcast after the season was over, that like I was playing pretty much exclusively control unders at the end of the year. Like they were just pretty severely mispriced, and I was cashing out big. I think I ended like 70% up on the season or something like that. So on like 400 something bets. Like
Wow.
the season was pretty normal. And then, yeah, like once I started to find a couple of these edges that were reliable, like I was just, yeah, it was easy. Wake up every morning before the games, just hammer the unders on whatever they had before the maps came out. And then once the maps came out, the lines would shift and I'd just sit back and say, I'm not going to mess with this.
Just
Like, and I
printing
never,
money, printing money with
yeah,
control.
just it was a little less stressful. It was nice. I felt like my process made sense, and like yeah, the results spoke for themselves. I mean, yeah, it's always stressful when you're playing prize picks, especially, and like you have like multiple legs that you need, and like even if you have a 5% edge, like it doesn't mean you're going to hit it every single time. And like yeah, you're only going to notice that in the long run. And so yeah, it can be stressful even with when you feel like you have an edge. But yeah, I'd say it was as stress free as it could have been. Major five, yeah, it was just printing cash and pretty much nothing else. So yeah, and it was fun.
Did it take you? So obviously you started, really catching your groove at the end of the season. So I did not do so hot. I mean, I'm a risk taker, baby. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it and set it and forget it, which ended up being my downfall, But luckily, I know Dr. Doug now, so I will not make that mistake. And you guys know Dr. Doug now, and you guys will not make that mistake. But why do you think it took you until the end of the season to really pick up on that? Is it just kind of, trial and error, or you like finally picked up on that trend at the end? How did it really roll around to the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it's just like you gotta be in it to understand like the nuance of it a little bit. Like, yeah, I mean, it's easy to say on the outside, okay, and like for me, I've been vocal in saying that I think prize picks in general, like you gotta have a model, whether it be a mathematical one or just like a mental model. Like you can't just play prize picks based on feel. Like it's never gonna work. And then I think I'd go a step further and say, like, if I just told you what every player's average kills were for every mode, I don't think that that would be enough to get you where you need to go to be successful on prize picks. And so, like, for me, it was like, okay, well, I want to build a model, and I built a simple model of like how I wanted to project it. And then it's like getting in there, like starting to compare it against the lines they're putting up and going, why are their lines different? And like, you have to come at it from the approach of they know more than I do first, even if you feel like you know more than they do about it. Start with the hypothesis that they don't, and then disprove yourself. Like disprove yourself, and that's why it took me a little while to hit on it. Is I had some hypotheses about what I thought were edges, and then I started testing. I don't know, I can't really say for sure. And then once I hit the control one, it was like that's when I think we did a whole show where I kind of laid out like how the distribution of rounds, like how often games go to round 5 versus not. And like once I put that down on paper and like looked at that, then I was like, okay, I've disproven this. Like, I think I know more than they do about what's going on here. And then it was 3. But yeah, like if I had just come in at the beginning and modeled it out and said, well, I'm getting this guy at 25 and they have him at 22, I'm just going to start hammering those because, yeah, clearly there's some inefficiency here. Maybe I wouldn't stop to think, well, what's the difference between the mean and the median here? Like, what kind of adjustment should I be making if a team's a huge favorite? I think we'll talk about that a little bit here about like what to do in those scenarios. But like if you're not thinking about that, you need to always come in with a healthy dose of skepticism over your own process first. And so, yeah, that's what led me to take a little while.
I think that was my problem. If people go back in time, they'll listen to my 110%
Yeah.
mindset. I always thought, like they really need this game. Granted, they need every game. Now I can look back and be like, damn, Chris, like, you paid the man, but I learned my lesson. I still think there are going to be times. I'm probably still going to say it on this podcast, but I'm going to think more logically now. I'm going to look at it from a lot higher up of a scope than just, feeling. Feelings don't always make you money. Sometimes they cost you money. More times
I
than
mean,
not,
I
they
think
cost you.
feelings are a good place to start from too. Like, hey, I had, I mean, like, there's a million. Like I say, oh, I had hypotheses and then I disproved them. I could have a million of them. Like you need to start from somewhere. And like, I mean, I do this even in my normal job. It's like when you have to come up with insights from data, you have to start somewhere. There's a big data. You can't just like start randomly jumping in and see what comes out. Like, yeah, if you have a feeling like, I feel like this is true. I think your step was missing was you thought that, so
And that
then you
was
bet
it.
on it.
That was it.
You said that's enough. That's
Yeah.
good enough. But yeah, so like, but yeah, I mean, that I shouldn't knock feelings. Yeah, if I didn't have if I just came in, I didn't know anything about COD or whatever, or anything about statistics or something like, yeah, maybe my feelings I shouldn't really be, yeah, giving them as much merit. But I was thinking, I have this feeling. How can I prove it, or like at least make myself reasonably convinced that I'm right?
Yeah, just don't get married to the feeling. Start with the feeling and then, do your own research. That was definitely my thing. I was the type of person when I played Madden, I would have a passing play, I'd pick it. I'm throwing it to a person. I already decided who I'm throwing it to. I don't care about looking on the field. Like if there's a guy
Yeah.
cutting across the middle, he's getting the ball every time. X is getting the ball. I'm not looking at the field. And that was why I was terrible at Madden. That's why I'm terrible at fantasy Call
You
of
just
Duty.
gotta take that losing, yeah, and like, yeah. I mean, yeah, I will say, like, losing money is the quickest way to like really understand what's important or whatever. Like, yeah, you lose money a few times, you find yourself looking in the mirror, like, what did I do? What can I do different? Like, yeah, and like maybe you won't feel like that when you first start out because you're just like, oh, everything's working great. It's like it takes one of those good losing streaks to make you go, am I right here, or am I just like so deluded into thinking that I'm right? Like,
Yeah.
have I gaslit myself into thinking that I'm right or whatever? That's how I feel sometimes, or I'm just looking in the mirror like, no, you're right. Like,
Yeah.
it's the players who are bad. You're right, or whatever the
It's like
meme
that
is.
meme. Yeah.
Like,
Point. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not, you're not bad at betting. The players are bad at
Yeah.
playing. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah. No, I'll die on that hill. No, I'm kidding. But obviously, last year you really caught your footing and you ended the season very well. But obviously, there's takeaways from how you handled the beginning of the season last year compared to how you're probably going to handle it this year. What's the early season betting strategy looking like for you, if any?
Yeah, I think like the big thing is we can't we don't want to be too what's the word? Like, we don't want to be too set on fixed on what people did last year and use it to predict this year. Like, I mean, that's the reality of COD, is that every team is, for the most part, is very different than they were last year. A lot of players that we feel like maybe we had nailed down are on in different situations than before. We know situation plays a huge role, and like I would say even more so than that, like I think the king, I said, I put in our notes, game length is the king, but like knowing how long and how successful teams are going to be in the game is the key to predicting, one, how long the game will go, but then also two, how many kills those players will get. And like, by that metric, like, we shouldn't be using individual player average. Like, if I know Slasher had 20 kills per game last year in Hardpoint, well, he's on a different team now. Like, Atlanta came into every single game as 60+% favorites to win each Hardpoint or whatever. And like, even if they're still like, I still think Boston's going to be good at Hardpoint this year. It doesn't, yeah, like, I can't use it in the same context. And so like, I'd say like early season, you know much less than you think you know. And I think everybody does. Like, I made this note, and I think it was brought up a little bit last year, just like by the public in general. It was like they did the breaking point picks where like you had like popular people picking games through the first major. The average breaking point prediction was right less than 50% of the time, and they didn't even have to like bet like they didn't have longer odds on the favorite, or like on the, yeah, like it was just pick a team that will win this game. You can pick whatever team you want for every game, and they still on average didn't even get 50% of them right. So like and like, yeah, if you had actually bet like one unit on every underdog all season, but instead of giving you the underdogs like line, they just gave you like plus 100, minus 100, and just give you your double your money back, you still would have made money over the first major. Like, people just don't know what they don't know. And like, at the beginning of the year, everybody's like, oh, I put these four players that were all in different situations, I put them together, I know they're going to be good. And like, it's just so hard to think like that. Like, I'm vocal that the the product of a team is greater than the sum of its parts. And like, yeah, when you're putting new players together, it's very hard to predict if that product will be bad or good. And so like, yeah, for me, I'm going to be attacking the early season with just like very cautiously, from a betting perspective, but also like anytime I'm getting like a good chance, like on DraftKings, for instance, to play players on a team that is perceived weak but hasn't shown anything yet, like that's typically a chance where you can maybe get some value.
I think with a lot of people too, including myself, you get caught up in the people, in the composition of a team, and you don't take into consideration the game. Where like there are people who play certain titles better than other from certain developers, and just because someone didn't perform last year to like a high standard, you can't carry that with you to this year and expect them not to. It's a totally different game. Like I was saying, before we even went live, like on like Skid Row Hard Point, right? Is probably the easiest way to explain this. Like P1 is in the middle of everything, but you can realistically only attack that once, and then you have to start rotating for P2 and get up top, which is a power position. So like the opening game is going to start off very slow, but if you can't, like on that one, it's low starting up in my eyes, right? I could be different. They could hit it a couple times, but then another part of it is like think of terminal hard point. P2, which is back dreams, if you hold that, most likely you're going to be able to get into playing, right? If you can string those two together and then it comes all the way back around, you have to get Burger, which you can hide in a corner. Like chaining together hills is going to be so massive this year. And I can personally see a lot of these hard point games being blowouts. Like there's not going to be as many close hard points as people think this year. Obviously, as the game progresses, I think people will get their footing a little bit more. People will really find their stride. But I think starting off, we're going to see a lot of blowouts when it comes to hard points.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a good point. I would be curious to look back in past seasons to see if you're right that like the score differential early in the season is greater than in the end of the season just because yeah, like by the end of the season people know how important certain hills are. They're much more willing to play a certain way to try to guarantee them the most points overall. Where yeah, at the early season teams that have like an advantage of understanding which hills are the best or what are the best power spots on specific hills and just like never get broken on a hill or whatever. Like that doesn't happen at the end of the year. So yeah, I believe you, and yeah, it'd just be interesting to look and see like if the absolute score differential on games early in the season is greater than in the end of the season where teams are close. But that has huge implications from a fantasy and a prize picks perspective because long games make more kills even for even for the team that's losing long games is making for more kills and so we like if we're looking for overs yeah we want the games to go as long as possible hardpoint's a great like example of it but it holds true in control and search as well like there's just more time for kills it's just that simple and like but it like the amount of kills is like substantially larger like yeah like the average control that only played one round or sorry only plays 3 rounds or something like that like the average number of kills in that game is going to be like 10 to 20 kills less than in a game that goes to like extra rounds and so like yeah I think we yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective that like maybe we should be looking for those spots where like even though a team is favored, we should expect the score differential to be really high, the game to be really short, and maybe we expect them to go under because of it. And I think you referenced it, and I'll bring it up that like as far as I can tell, it looks like things are going to be playing slower in hardpoint this year than last year. Now I would say like what I've seen from looking at prize picks lines, they are just taking the averages from last year and using them again. And so they are not assuming, as far as I can tell, any sort of slowdown in hardpoint. And so, I mean, you can use that as you will, but it like, and it's not until we see the actual matches, we don't know. I think every pro player will tell you that things play different in scrims than they do in the matches. And so just looking at some like old scrim data may not be very telling as to how fast the maps are going to play. But yeah, everything I've seen is pointing to this being a slow hardpoint year. And Prize Picks is just slapping last year's average kills map one for pretty much everybody. And then adjusting it for maybe like, yeah, potentially lopsided matchups. But yeah, I'd say that's a big point of interest to me at the beginning of the season is how long are these hardpoint games going to be going and how many kills per minute are we going to be getting?
Yeah, I to like add on to it playing slower, like the power positions that exist on certain hardpoint maps are gonna be a big point to me to not get a lot of kills. Think of like sub base. If someone gets top third, people are gonna do everything in their power to not peak them, especially on like certain hills like P3 or whatnot. Or like if you have that, you're gonna do everything in your power to avoid that person instead of taking that gunfight on. And I think you're gonna see a lot of stationary iron holding with people not challenging them. And I think that could play into it. One other thing, this might be the hottest take of all time. I think we're gonna see more search and destroy rounds than we ever have of teams not planning the bomb.
And why do you say that?
I don't think there's many angles that cannot be watched that will account for like quick plants. I think unless it's picture perfect timing, I think we're going to see less plants than we can expect. I think rounds are going to be faster in search this year.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess my question or like my immediate thought is how will that impact the total number of kills in the round, or will the kills just come faster in the rounds? I suppose my first thought is, well, if the rounds are going to be going by quicker, maybe we're going to see more kills in each round. It's less likely that you just squeeze them from a 4v3 to a 4v2 to a 4v1 to a 4v0 or whatever if the rounds are happening faster. But that's just my first take on it because, yeah, it's not something I thought about, but it is very interesting. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense given the way that these search maps are set up that we might not see as many plants. But yeah, I mean, for the listeners, maybe you have an insight on that. Like the listeners are thinking, like, yeah, if that's true, what does that mean from a prize picks perspective or a DK perspective? Yeah, to me, my first take is maybe, yeah, it's going to make it so that instead of the average round having 6 kills in it, maybe the average round has more like 7 or whatever, like closer to 7. I'm sure we're somewhere in the between, but like, yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and I got one more. I'm like Vince Carter right now.
All right.
If we see a control on high rise, it's gonna be the lowest kill
Yeah.
map of all time because people are literally gonna try to like you can get spawn trapped so easily. Back in your spawn, it's like mayhem. But if someone has a leg up on you on kills and they want to play, for the good side on the last round, we're going to see a lot of sitting corner in the back of the map where up kills. Um, Even though, is it kills or I guess we don't know. Is it ticks or kills?
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's. I would assume it's still ticks, but I don't know. I mean, if you have the same amount of ticks, then it is
Yeah.
kills. So there's usually that incentive. But yeah, I guess I haven't. Yeah, I don't know enough about how the controls have played to know if yeah if that's coming if it's coming down to that often. But yeah, that's another interesting point. Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously it's going to be of interest, but like I would expect, and this is just my prediction, but like, so yeah, like right now, PrizePicks has just day one posted. I would expect that PrizePicks makes no adjustment based on how the games play on day one. And so I would expect big edges on day two and even on Sunday too. Like, I just find it hard to believe that PrizePicks is going to be watching the games close enough to go, oh yeah, these controls are playing way slower than last year. We better drop everybody by 10% because they're going to get the data in, but it's such a small sample. Like maybe 90% of the controls go under on day one. They're not like abandoning ship yet or anything like that. They're not, it's just too small of a market for them. So yeah, my prediction would be I would expect PrizePicks to be slow to act on those sorts of things. So maybe that's something that we can be watching out for on day one is like, yeah, if every single player goes under in the hard points on day one, yeah, let's just blindly smash hard point unders on day two. If the lines, yeah, I would say it's fairly easy to look up just like players' average kills from last year in each mode and then compare them to what PrizePicks is putting. And like, yeah, I'd say that's like the first litmus test is like, let's see where they're at. Okay, they're just clearly using averages. Okay, then I do have an informational advantage here. I went back, I'm like going back to what I said about, well, let's test our hypothesis and be like cautious. Or if that's the case, just slam it. Like
Yeah.
just go in. Like
Yeah.
you don't want, yeah. Like these are the sorts of things that will go away. Like no doubt next week, if control plays 20% slower next week, don't expect there to be those same opportunities as this week. But yeah, things like that, I wouldn't expect them to be like on a 1 day turnaround, like going, okay, we better lower everybody 10%. Yeah.
That would be nice, but yeah. Well, no, it's nice that they're not, but whatever. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to get more in
Yeah.
on it. But everyone listening is going to be like, no shit, Chris, when I say this, but obviously there's only so many kills available on a map. And you brought up, with one person going off, someone else could be impacted by it. Your example was like Pred and Kenny.
Mhm.
How do you look at how this game will play? Obviously, it's going to be the same. Like I said, only so many kills on the map. But what else are you thinking when it comes to the slaying department?
Yeah, I do think like there's an interesting dynamic between like the star players on a team in games that go longer versus like yeah, more support or role players on a team when the game goes longer. Like I think yeah, I've typically yeah be more interested in betting unders in control last year, but like I was never betting unders on the top dog player. Yeah, like players like Pred or Hydra because like if the games go longer, they're getting not just like they're like maybe Pred gets 30% of the kills normally, even though like it should be like 25% split. Pred's getting at least 30% on average or whatever. But like in those games, I typically see the relative amount of kills going up. So like in a game that goes really long, instead of Pred's season average of like 30% of the kills, he's getting 35% of the kills or whatever. And so like he's getting even more. And so you don't want, if you see these longer games, I'd think even you should be a little more wary that like their distribution could skew more towards the over. But like a player like Kenny or yeah, someone who's playing more of a role, they're much more consistent. If they're getting 20% of the kills in a short game, they're getting 20% of the kills in the long game. And so then it just becomes really important to think how long the game is going to go. But yeah, like I saw most of the time when I would bet the unders and like I have a team that I'm targeting, like okay, I think they're going to go under like their team kill total or whatever. I typically want to target the guys with the lowest average kills going in because yeah, you don't. There are just a lot less games like pop off games from your lowest kill players because they're just typically the reason that they have the lowest average kills is because they don't put themselves in positions to like have the potential to just go pop off. They're not in gunfights with three different people where every once in a while they just win all three gunfights all at once or whatever. Like and like that's nice from a PrizePicks and like a betting perspective is that like their distribution of outcomes is a lot more like compact. You don't see a ton of Kenny 45 bombs or whatever. But yeah, like Pred's liable to drop 45 if the game just goes a little bit longer than normal or something like that, even if his average is closer to 25 or something. So I think, yeah, that was one note I'd made in here. It's just like consider the type of player as well when you're thinking about how long you think the game will go, because yeah, like it's not proportional. It's not that just like everything scales up. Typically, when the games get longer, you see the stars having an even bigger proportional impact. So
Interesting. I mean, the way you say it is a lot more elegant than me saying, there's only so many kills you can get. But I mean, it makes total sense. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to, I mean, pretty much all players right there this year. Obviously, it's a new game, but we have a big rookie pool this year, which I think it's going to be a great year for rookies. I think, like, I'm very high on Gwyn. I've been watching their scrims a lot, and, like, that is someone that, in my eyes, is not going to be priced correctly for a long time. I could be wrong, but there's not enough of a sample for a lot of these guys to make a honest line from it. So I think there could be a week or two that go by, then it's just so far off. And like I'm looking at rookies a lot personally when it comes to me building lineups or me building my own parlays. I am immediately looking at rookies. How do you feel about that statement right there, Dr. Doug?
yeah, no, I think that that's a good point. I think like even historically on draft, I think this point is especially prescient for DraftKings, like that they have a hard time knowing what to price guys with no history behind them. Yeah, Kremp game one in his career or whatever, or like in the first series is dropping 40 or whatever in one of them. What do? Do you make him 10,000 for day two? DraftKings, it seems their approach is typically not to. Like they typically will slowly, if they start him at min price or whoever, like I think we'll see a lot of the rookies at close to min price. At least that'd be my expectation. They will just, I think they must have some sort of like cap on how much they'll increase them over one day. And so you'll see those prices only slowly ratchet up from day one. And then also, I think we talked about this, but like they'll post the lines for Sunday before the games on Saturday happen and stuff. So like you can gain a lot of advantage there. The problem is that on DraftKings, everybody else has the same advantage. Like they can also see the same game. But yeah, I would expect. I guess if I had to make a prediction, I'd say that there'll probably be come this Sunday. There'll be some rookies that you're gonna need on your team for Sunday's games if we learn anything from Friday and Saturday. Just because they'll be $3,000 on DraftKings, and like even if in their worst case scenario they're gonna do pretty well. Like I think Gwyn is a good candidate for that. I'm interested to see how DraftKings. I guess I had looked when I got home. Has DraftKings? It doesn't look like they posted they still haven't posted the contest yet.
They're waiting to hear the
Shame.
podcast. That's what it is.
Yeah, they want to know what to look out for. But yeah, I think I just in summary, DraftKings has been one slow to update rookies, but also has been typically fairly low on rookies relative to what we know about the history of the CDL. Like it's not like baseball where like guys who come up midseason, like it's very unlikely that they're the next Mike Trout and they just join and suddenly just start like in COD, you can just join and instantly have impact. And like because we're so bad at scouting as a league and in general, like there can be guys that would have significant impact. Yeah, we think Ghosty, like that can come up and just instantly make a huge difference. And so like in DraftKings is typically they treat them like MLB prospects that come up. Like even if the guy's gonna be the next Mike Trout, it'd probably take him 3 more years before that. So let's just price him at 2,500 and like see what happens. Like, but in COD it doesn't work that way. 2 days later he could be $7,000, like, or could be worth $7,000, but he's probably still priced at 3 or something. So
yeah, I mean, even outside of the whole betting aspect of it, like I love the rookies that this league has right now. Obviously, I want to keep seeing more, get brought up through challenges and whatnot. But from what I've watched with these scrims, these guys are holding their own, and it's really cool to see. There were some moves that obviously Miami is a complete rookie team besides Vickle. Excited to see how they play. Shut out Major 2 over there too. Can't wait to go to Miami. But all in all, there's some new faces in the league, and it's about damn time. So I hope that continues to progress, and we start seeing the future, which we're really starting to see. I mean, I might be biased, but I get to see Snoopy pretty often, and he is just like, you could tell people that are just so grateful to be playing at the highest level, right? And the amount of passion that these guys have. It's like watching college basketball. It's like watching March Madness. Like, they're playing for their paycheck. They're playing to stay. They're playing to go to the next step. They're playing to be a household name. Like just seeing that, like it's really really cool. and especially this year, I think it's going to be one of the more competitive seasons we've had in a long time. Granted, people will say it's very top heavy, but I think once the season actually starts, you're going to see some people, and some teams that you did not expect to be this good be very good. I'm going to go on
Yeah.
record and say Carolina.
Interesting. Yeah, I have become a proponent in recent years of the anything can happen early in the season, but I expect the same old dogs to be at the top at the end. I think that's my cynical view of it. I think yeah, like these young hungry guys that are learning the game and like yeah, maybe have an edge up in like the some of the new mechanics or just like like yeah, what it takes to win more gunfights early in the season, like can win some more cheeky kills than normal and like yeah, they can win games. Where I do think that like there are two stages to the CDL season. I think it's like the learning stage, and then the okay, everybody's learned. Now let's perfect it, like the honing your craft stage. And I think that's when we see teams like FaZe typically like start to come out ahead more. Is just because like once everybody learns all the cheeky spots and like the new things, then it's a different game. It's who can do it the best, who can not mess up the most often. And like you mentioned these rookies that are doing really well in scrims, and like that is really important. But yeah, like it's a different beast to always make the right call to when to rotate when you're on the main stage. And like those are the times. Like I've always said that I think what makes FaZe so great is just they just don't make that many mistakes. COD is a game of mistakes. Everyone makes them every game, including FaZe. Every game, people make a mistake where they could go back and go, maybe I shouldn't have rotated there, or I should definitely have won that gunfight if I had been prepared for it. But like everybody makes mistakes, but they make the fewest. And like they were so frustrating to play because you could play a pretty good game and like they just never give you a chance back in. And like those sorts of teams just become really strong at end of game. But yeah, to your point, at the beginning of the game, yeah, you can have some guys learn some good spots or some really good strats, and these kids are really willing to learn early in the game and be the first person to figure out a new strat. And like, yeah, it can take you really far, and like, yeah, you can do really well. I think if you look back historically, especially since the CDL started, like your major one and major two top fours do not look like your major five or your champs top fours, I suppose. Major five can sometimes be a little crazy with teams already locked in, but like your champs top four and your major one top fours can look really different. I mean, yeah, you think about Hunter T from 2 years ago, not what finishing T12 at was it T12 at major one or T12 at major two, and then winning champs. Like,
Mhm.
like when I saw that, I mean, I'm sure I like because I held that belief, I was like, yep, knew it. Like, but yeah, like sort of that sort of
That
stuff
was great.
happens.
That was a really cool story too, because I remember everyone was like, "Blow it up, blow it up," and it was like,
Yeah.
"No, we're sticking with the boys." And then brought champs
They're
home.
just
That
they're a phase two team. They're like a stage that second stage team. They're like you just gotta like get me to the second stage, and then yeah, I'm loving 100T every time. Although yeah, you want to talk a little bit about I had in here like a couple of these teams that I have some question marks about. I'm curious your thoughts on them as well. But 100T is number one in my book in terms of the biggest question mark. So they have a team, blow it up. They blow it up just like they didn't do before. They blow it up. All new team now. Cammy, Afro, Joe, and Ghosty. What do you think about that team? Where do you think they are relative to where Hunter T was at the end of last year? Like, yeah, I guess, yeah. What do you think about Hunter T?
I am a big fan of Dan Ghosty. I want to say that I am a huge fan of Dan. I love the way that he looks at the game, and he's just a great person. But I'm also, I have to say, to me, this feels like a massive downgrade from how they ended the season last year. I'm not saying these guys are bad, but they had a star-studded team last year, on paper, and everyone's performance on the team pretty much, backed that up. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know if they're going to be able to compete with some of the top dogs. A lot of question marks around it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're a phenomenal team, great organization, great guys on the team. As of right now, I just think it's a downgrade from last year. What are your thoughts on it so I don't feel like a psychopath?
No, I mean, I would say I generally agree. I think, like I mentioned, like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and like they're taking some parts that have not seen a ton of success. I guess Ghosty being the odd one out of that situation. Like Ghosty saw a lot of success, but was maybe like people were more critical of his just like his stat line, which I don't care about that. You get wins, or whatever sort of thing. But the other three, like three players, in Cammy and Afro especially, that like I was very high on coming into last season, and then like didn't perform very well at all with Minnesota. And so like I think what 100T is doing is betting that the whole will be greater than the sum of these parts, and like basically the situation that they're in is going to be better than like what their individual performances look like last year. Obviously with Joe DeCeves is on LAG, like that's just a pain fest all year. Like, and like they think that he can be better than that too. But yeah, like the reality is you're bringing in three players that struggled by any metric last year. One player who struggled statistically, but was on a team that was extremely strong last year, and saying we hope that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts here. And like, yeah, as you said, they certainly could be. I wouldn't be surprised if they were good. But my prior here, my like preliminary hypothesis is that these guys are not going to be good. I think I would go farther than you. I said like I don't think they're going to be good. I think they will make a change. Not that they will have to, but I think that they will, and I just don't think that they're going to be good. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. And like I said, like if they did well, yeah. I was early days a huge fan of Afro. Thought that he was like one of the most talented players in the league, and so if he comes on and pops off, I'd be like, okay, like that's awesome. Like, yeah, you got him in a great situation, and now he's thriving. Like, but yeah, my prior here is I don't think they're going to be good.
I personally think Cammy's gonna have a phenomenal year. I think this is his type of game. He's a very good. I'm gonna watch over you. I'm gonna hold the irons type AI. I think this is gonna be a great game for him. I think he has one of his best careers that he's had in a while this year. And before we move on to the next game, I also want to say like I went into this year, and I'm sure a lot of teams did, like fielding their rosters, thinking about like your SMG duo. We're gonna see a lot of three ARs, one SMG on the map. So like
Yeah,
those duos are, not really gonna be, SMG duos every single hill, every single play. So it's, who could adapt to certain hills and, who could pull the AR out when they can, who could pull the SMG out when they can. And, there's that. So I'm curious to see how that goes as well. But that'll make things interesting for sure.
yeah, no, that's it. I think that I mean, I've always been a huge fan of players who were good at knowing when to pull out the AR, like especially subs. But like just in general, I think like that's a very undervalued skill right now is one, learning when to do it, and two, doing it in the right positions to actually gain your team kills. I would love nothing more than like if we had some access to data to see, because like we can obviously only see the kills that do happen, but like yeah, like knowing if like when players switch guns, like are they netting out more kills because of the switch or not? I think we'll see that this year being more valuable. But then yeah, again, these subs that can pull out a third AR or play the whole game with a third AR, yeah, it's maybe not necessarily what the teams were going for when they built the rosters, but it's going to be really important now. And yeah, who knows? Maybe 2 months from now, I mean, surely the guns will be changed and maybe it'll be a completely different meta than it is now. But yeah, for now, Major One, yeah, is really going to be a question of like, how good is your second sub at playing AR, and how good are they at identifying on maps with two subs when to pull out the second AR, or maybe more like when are they going to pull the sub out, if at all. But yeah, it's I think that's like a really cool thing, and like it's a like cool little dynamic we'll get at the early part of the season here of like, yeah, maybe players that aren't even that strong at sub, but they always seem to have the right gun out at the right time is like that can be even more powerful.
It's going to be massive. If you don't know when to pull it out at the right time, say you lose a hill, right? And you're like, okay, we have to break this. I'm going to get Mixie. I'm going to pull out the SMG. And you are getting, held from multiple angles. At that point, it turns into, okay, just chalk the hill. Let's go next. Like it's going to obviously always been a game of positioning and gunny, but now you add that extra element in where it's just like, you got to play chess and not checkers, and know when to move that piece, when to move it. So
Yeah.
it's going to make the year interesting for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the next team that I was wondering about is Minnesota. I think a team. Yeah, obviously we were just talking about Cammy and Afra. Like they didn't do as well as I think they were hoping to last year. They bring in a different team this year. They've got Accuracy, Lens, Vivid, and Awakening. What do you think about that team? I think maybe I'll lead since I made you lead last time. I think. I don't know. I'm a bit low, except I don't know anything about Lens. I'll just be the first one. I don't know anything about Lens. If he's amazing, like their team could be amazing. But I don't know that much about him. I'm a little skeptical of this team. I'm a huge proponent of Big Wake. Like I think he's a really strong player. I don't know. You're gonna need to show me something here. What do you think?
I'm in the same boat with you when it comes to Linz. I know he made a splash when he was in Toronto last year in challenges. Um, he is going to be the SMG on that team that pulls out the AI. So I'm curious to see how that one goes. Reese Vivid is a very good player, very fast, a very
You
fast
won't
player.
catch Reese pulling out the AR.
No, like he's going to be buzzing around. Accuracy is a very slow player. Awakening is probably in the middle of that. Runs around with the AI. Sometimes acts like it's an SMG, has an excellent gunny and great game sense. The big question mark is Linz. If Linz can pull his weight and really make an impact, this is a decent team in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, like I haven't watched much Minnesota scrims or anything.
They
But yeah,
have
like
been
I
scrimming a lot. They are probably like the number one team, like scrim
huh,
wise right now. They are ever since the season kicked off, they are scrimming around the clock. They're practicing a lot.
interesting. Yeah, I know. I was just gonna say, I wonder how a game like this plays for Reese, where like with Vivid, yeah, a game that, yeah, as we've said, plays a bit slower and like you need to be making these tactical decisions. Reese is a player who plays so fast. Yeah, I do wonder how that dynamic between him and Lamar works. Very curious to see how it'll play out in these early games. But yeah, yeah, you think like. Yeah, in these games where you can just get super mixy at all times, Reese has had success, and so yeah, you wonder when the game slows down a little bit, and yeah,
I
what it'll be able to do. But
I
it's not
also
necessarily good or
think
bad. It's more just interesting.
Oh yeah, I also think a big point is Wake in accuracy. I think this is the type of AI duo that Wake needs to thrive. Like last year when it was Wake and Beans, they were the same player. Like they were both wanted to run around. High kill games. Like it was just they wanted to be the Slayer. But I think Lamar accuracy has that I'm gonna slow it down. I'm gonna hold your eye in. Like I think this is the type of AI that Big Wake has to be beside to have a very good year. So I think this year is going to be a good one for Joe Awakening.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think, as you said, I mean, it's not insignificant to have started early. I mean, like we are not very far from when this game dropped. Like the time between when the game dropped to these games this weekend, it was like a month, like
Yeah,
total between the two. Like, if you played for 4 or 5 extra days, that's like a non-negligible percentage more games played than some other teams here. Like, yeah, we're talking not a 0.5% more games. We're talking like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% more games played than some of these other players have up to this point in a competitive setting. So like, yeah, it's not something insignificant. I know like yeah, it won't matter when we hit stage 2 or like phase 2 of the season, but yeah, I mean the points are worth the same amount right now that they are later in the season, and so take them when you can get them.
yeah.
Um,
How do you feel about this quick statement? BPL being a thing now is a big upper hand for these players to learn the play style of people that they're going to be playing against. I know eights have always existed, but now it's a more structured system, and like also it gives you an ability to grind outside of just pro eights. That will like makeshift pro eights after your scrims are done, after your games are done. It allows for more reps as a whole. I think it's going to be really big for play. And this isn't me just like, oh my god, like hell of a job, Easy Mac. It is a hell of a job,
yeah,
phenomenal. But I'm not just gassing it up to say that. Like I genuinely think it's adding more insight to these players and giving them more reps.
yeah. Um, I I don't agree in general. I think like I guess maybe my first counter would be everybody. Let's assume everyone plays them, then they should all get about the same, and then we're just right back where we've netted out to nothing. Now, obviously, you could say, okay, well, not everybody plays them. More players play it. Or there are players that don't play it, but yeah, like maybe proportional on each team, you're getting about the same amount of participation in BPL eights that you were. So I don't know. It goes back to my argument against scrims, which is like if you just get 1% better every day in practice, but all you do is scrim other teams, well, they're getting 1% better too. So you're not actually getting any better or whatever. And so
That's
like
fair.
in that respect, I don't think so. And then to your other point, which I would disagree with more harshly, is that they're learning each other's play styles by playing BPL. I would give $1,000 to a player who could like tell me they learned something about another. Like those guys are just vibing. Like they're not. I
I
don't.
would be
Maybe
such a
I'm thinking
dirtbag.
less. Like yeah. Like I don't. Yeah. Maybe I could see Austin. He's finished. Slashers finished the game. He gets his notepad out. He's like, okay, Reese hit left on that Skid Row P2. Like, but yeah. Like I don't think that. Maybe yeah. Maybe I don't give it enough credence, but I don't think that that's happening
I
very
know if it's
much.
me, like in a hill
You might have
pops.
invented. Yeah, you might have invented a new meta here. These guys are going to be like, yeah, it's going to be like Among Us or something in these games. Now it's like we need to figure out what everybody's play style is like so we can suss them out.
Yeah,
But
I'd
yeah, no,
purposely
it's
throw the game so someone has to correct me on how I should have. I'm going to piss them off so much, and I'm just going to take all the wrong routes and everything like that,
yeah.
just
Well,
to
yeah,
have
see,
them
like
correct
somebody
me.
corrects you and says, "See, you should have hit right here." Or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay,
like,
so that guy thinks that hitting right is the right play on this
yeah,
hill. Okay, got it.
yeah,
Like, so he must be telling his team that. Like, yeah, wait, you might have. Yeah, this is like 10-dimensional chess or something. But yeah, I don't know. I don't give a lot of credence to that now. But now that it's out in the world, maybe it is. But yeah, I see it as like a really good way to get reps, and I do think reps are really important. But like, do I think that it will drive a competitive advantage for one team over another? Maybe, but not a huge amount. I think you've got just too many. Yeah, it's too popular. It's too popular. Everybody's playing it, so like you're not gonna get. Yeah, if it was you and seven of your buddies grinding out these hard point games, like really learning the rotations and the spawns, like that's one thing. But yeah, you're in the server with seven other guys on different pro teams that are learning the same things as you
yeah.
and going through the same trials and tribulations. Because at the end of the day, it's a team game still. So like it's not just your experience that matters; it's everyone on your teams. And so like yeah, if one guy doesn't pick up the pinch, all four players learn the cost of not picking up the pinch on a hill, not just the one guy who didn't pick it up or whatever. And so, yeah, that's a tough one.
That's fair. All right, what's you had the last team that you're a little about? What are we talking about?
I think I'm more questioning. Maybe I'm a bit higher on Seattle. I think Seattle's the other team that like, yeah, at least the betting markets are a little confused about Seattle. I would say people aren't really sure what to make of Seattle. Right now, at least at the beginning, as far as I can tell. I mean, obviously, I said before we don't know much about what we don't know, and Seattle's a team that's obviously four players that are playing together for the first time. But yeah, I don't know. I'm relatively high on Seattle. I think I've always been a fan of RC's. I think that like RC's is a good player regardless of what happened last year. I think that like he's been solid. I think Hook has like shown flashes of brilliance as well. I think him ending up on Seattle is like yeah, it just kind of sucks for him that like he couldn't stay with the Optic team. But like, yeah, I think he has shown that he's capable of a lot. I think he and Illy have really good chemistry together as well. Like, I think that there's like that team has a lot, and then Abuza, right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, like and like I think he could be amazing. Obviously, like I've seen his stats and stuff, and they're incredible. So like I don't know, I feel like this is a team that like we sort of talked about how like if Linz could carry his weight, then Minnesota could be good. I think if Abuza could carry his weight and be really good, like Seattle could be great. Like I think like they have like an even better core around him that like yeah, if Abuza ends up being the next Scrappy or whatever, like we could see Seattle being like yeah, a top 4 top 5 team where I don't really see that same I can't make that same argument with Minnesota.
Yeah.
What do you think about Seattle though?
I agree with that 1,000%. I was hoping you said you were about it, so I could pretty much say everything you just said.
Yeah.
And again, Abuza made a splash in Toronto. A lot of these guys like that tournament changed their life, and they really showed out for it. Um, but I agree. I'm high on rookies, as I said at the beginning, and it's the same thing. Pull your weight. This is a great team. You have people that know what they're doing out there, and having that veteran presence to that extent in that locker room with Abuza, like that kid's learning gold every single
Yeah.
day. So if he can implement it, it's going to be a phenomenal team.
Yeah, no, I think that team, yeah, they're really they could be really streaky. Like they could really yeah, start to just roll teams over too. Yeah, I think it's exciting. Let's see how first weekend go. I think their first game playing 100T and we'll get to the games now, but like yeah, I think their game against 100T is going to be very interesting to me how that plays. Like 'cause that's a game that we see maybe we could just go to that game even though it's not the first game like yeah, we see 100T coming in as decent favorites in this game. Minus 150 is what I had written down here. I'm sure it might have changed a little since yesterday when I made these notes. But yeah, minus 150 to 100T to win. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting line to me, given what I said about 100T before and how I feel. I think, yeah, I I don't think that's where I would put it. At least I think this game is closer to a toss-up, and like yeah, I'm interested to see how these teams have prepared. I mean I've already said it before, but like I do think like these first games it comes down to a lot of just like how your preparation's gone in the last month, not necessarily who's going to be out on top at the end of the season. So maybe even if 100T looks really great here, I'm not counting Seattle out by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're a team that on paper seems like they could get better with time, but yeah, I do think this game is interesting. Do you have any thoughts on this game specifically?
It's weird to me that LAT is favored here. It really is. Like if anything, I could see it being a pick 'em. Just even but them being favored is very confusing to me. If I'm a betting man, which I am because I wouldn't be here, I'm riding Seattle there. Granted, I'm not going with feeling though. Not going with feeling, so I'm going to do it
Not just
responsibly.
feel.
I'm going to do it responsibly. I have the feeling, and I have nothing to back it up, so I'm not going to do it that much. I'll do a little bit, a little sprinkle,
Just just a little bit.
a
But
little
yeah, I mean,
sprinkle.
that just a little bit can't hurt anything.
No.
But yeah. Well, I had just jotted down a couple notes on prize picks from this game that I thought were interesting. I think the first one is map 2 Hook over under 7 kills in search. I think that's interesting because so like one thing I've talked about in the past is like how score effects affect like a game. So like if I just take the average of a player's kills over their last 10 games, I might get one number. But like if a few of those games were like 6-1 routes, like that player is probably not getting like could get a lot more kills if the game went longer and they play better competition. And so like another thing here is that like so I've talked about adjusting kills for how long the game went. So like if a game was 6-1 and they got 6 kills in an average game that's more like 6-4, like maybe they're getting 2 or 3 extra kills there. And so like if I take the average, I only count the 6 they got, maybe I'm undercounting how many kills they could get in like an even matchup search and destroy game. And so like using that adjustment, I have like Arcedy's had more average kills than Hook did last year. Yeah, is priced under him in terms of kills. So I think Hook feels a bit high to me here. And just like, yeah, I would encourage you to look at the numbers and like feel I was trying to pull up his stats here. But from last year in search. And so I will say one thing, like we talked about how search could play a little bit different because of like the bomb planting or whatever. But in general, like a round of search requires you for the most part to get to kill all 4 players on the other team. So the total number of kills per round of search should be relatively stable even from last year. And another thing that I think is nice about search from a betting perspective in DraftKings and in prize picks is that like search is I've found to be the most uh what's the word, like continuous, like your skill carries over year to year better than in other modes. Hardpoint, if you get stuck on a team that doesn't know how to rotate, like you're going to have a hard time. But in search, like if you can take over in search, you can take over in search on any team. Like it's just a mode that lends itself to that. So yeah, looking at that, I don't know, I can't understand how Arcedes is under Hook in terms of kills. Hook feels a bit high to me here.
Okay, I respect that. Honestly, that Osity's call out is money to hear too, because I would have never thought that. Like, I feel like a lot of people's mindset on Osities is going to be skewed because of last year. In
Yeah, lots of
reality,
short, yeah.
that kid can play. Like, he knows
Yeah,
how to play, he knows how to win.
it's a great time of year to be considering that sort of thing. Like, yeah, so his average kills last year in search in his last 40 games was 5.8. But he was, if you account for the fact that they were losing a lot of those searches, like what he won only one of his or two of his last 12 search games, including a 1-6, an 0-6, a 1-6, and a 3-6 in there, like which are all below the average number of rounds played. Now we put him on a team and say your chances to win the search are more like 50-50. We need to boost that 5.8 up a little bit because that's not fair. It's putting him on last year's LEG team, but now he's on a team that's more. And so like this is a great time of year to like use those sorts of informational edges because as I said, prize picks is mostly looking at what the averages were last year. Well, yeah, if a player who was averaging 20 last year on phase is now like on a team that is probably going to be playing a lot more closer hard points, you probably need to bump that number up a little bit and
Let
then
me
vice versa.
let me
Yeah.
get this straight, Doug. So you're saying use the feeling in the early stages.
The feeling to inform the game length.
Acknowledge the
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah, I think if you can feel that the situation that a player is in now is preferable to the one they were in before, or vice versa, like I think that feeling is yeah, it's the best we can do right now. We don't have games to go off of, but yeah, like I think it can be easy for me to say I think Arcedes is in a situation to have more success in search than last year, like period or whatever. Like I think like that's a feeling that I can't necessarily prove because I've never seen Seattle play search together. But like looking at his results of 2-13 in their last games or whatever in search, I can say I'd give him a very small chance of that being his next 13 games as well in search because he changed teams now. And so because of that, I look at his median 6 kills, average 5.8 kills in those games and go, I bet he can probably average and median more than that amount of kills.
Yeah, I respect it. I respect it. Again, not going with the feelings, but it sounded like you were alluding to it, so I just wanted to,
Yeah, no,
I was gonna I had a heat check myself for a second. Just been firing. So one other thing you called out on the other side of that slate is Ghosty over under 21.5 for map 3. Why did that jump out to you?
Yeah, I think the thing that was interesting here is that, and I think I think it's negated a little bit by just the idea that like Control might play or is probably going to play a bit slower this year than last year. But like Texas was a weird team, so I've talked all about these score differential adjustments. We should adjust for how bad the blowouts were or whatever. But the other thing is map adjustments. So Texas was a team that in Control pretty much exclusively at the end of the year, their last 9 games were all Hotel and Expo Control, which were some of the slower maps in terms of kills per round in Control. And so, like again, yeah, it's I'm just looking for spots where maybe the average doesn't tell the whole story. And so Texas, yeah, I was sort of for the opposite reason. Like they played about league average number of Control rounds per game or whatever, but they were playing very slow compared to average maps. And so like maybe that Ghosties average he was averaging 20 a little over 21 kills per game last year, but if I adjust those for the maps that he was playing, he was actually getting more than that. If he was playing on just like a league average map in every game in Control. As I said, I'm a little skeptical that like chasing the overs in Control is going to be strong early in the season, but it is an interesting point to know and like a good like teaching tool, which is I've been talking about score differential, but yeah, map differential plays a huge role too. Like I mean, we know last year there were some maps that played a lot faster than other maps did, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this year.
That's a great call out. Really great call out. I love the adjustments on it. You're gonna have to teach me this offline, the whole adjustment side of things, which I'm pretty sure I can figure it out just by saying it out loud. But you have your own thing. I'll learn it after. But kind of back into it a little bit because we went for the second game of the day there because it was already on the conversation. Let's go to Boston Breach versus Atlanta FaZe. As of time of recording, the odds of Boston Breach plus 340 and Atlanta FaZe minus 525. Doug, kick us off. What are we thinking?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you think that Boston's more likely than plus 340 to win. I don't
Yes.
know why. Just a gut feeling that you might be. Yeah, no, I don't know. It could be anything. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like it is really hard. And like even when I was writing this, I wrote it above on our doc. It is hard to ignore the fact that Boston and Atlanta played the first game of the season last year, where Atlanta was huge favorites to win, and Boston did win the game. It's just really hard not to bring that point up here. Like I've been yeah, actually ironically I was talking about how I think Atlanta's a phase 2 team. They're a team that is strong in the second part of the year. I find it hard to believe that Atlanta's minus 500 favorites in the first game of the season against a team that one has one player from Atlanta's previous season or from previous year, and then also yeah, like I don't know. I don't have any like I mean I'm certainly not as high on Boston as you are, but like I'm having a hard time being low on Boston because yeah, they've got a lot of incredible pieces. I think yeah, they have a lot of upside. It's just hard for me to go yeah, Atlanta's got better than 2/3 chance to win this game. That just seemed like the first game of a new game that only came out a month ago against a team that's like not unbelievably weak or anything. Like I don't know. I find
It's
it hard to
insane.
believe there's any minus 600 favorites this early in the season. Like
Yeah.
whenever I see those, I'm skeptical.
I think these lines are insane. Just being in the middle, right? I am going to be agnostic to everything going on. That's an
Hmm.
absurd line. Like, to me, that screams like I just looked at how this team did last year, and I'm assuming they're going to do the same this year. It's phase. Who's Boston Breach? I'm bookmaker phase. Like, to me, it's insane. Even if you think phase is the better team, like, this is not a minus 525 game. This is like minus 230, maybe. If you want to give them that, like, you got to keep it a little closer off the bat. Me personally, I would go with Boston Breach in this situation. There's more meat on the bone, and
Yeah.
obviously take the information you want. Like, I'm a value guy. I go towards value. I'm not going to chase something minus 1,000 because no, my
Yeah.
luck, I'm going to put the house on it and I'm going to be sleeping in a box. Like,
Yeah.
it's just how my luck goes. I chase the value on it. Great pieces on both sides. What I'm a little worried about. First off, congratulations, Raza, on the baby. I think he's gonna come in
Yeah.
with I think he's gonna come in with the dad buff. I think he's gonna be, the one to take out. On the contrary, snaking is GA'd and Atlanta fans love snaking. I think they might be in their own heads too much, to not snake, and it's gonna get them caught a couple times. When you have a team like Boston, you have a couple cracked SMGs, but you also have the Don Austin slasher. I don't think the kid's ever snaked in his life just out of principle. I think they're just more comfortable on the map this weekend, and I think we see a Boston Breach win. I think we
Yeah,
see it. I think we see it 3-1.
that's a good point. Like, yeah, it's early in the season. Yeah, I know the players are going to be. Yeah, you don't want to be the team that is the like. You don't want to be the team that breaks the GA first, even if it's on accident or whatever. It's like maybe that's in the back of your head a little bit, thinking, yeah. I think one interesting prize picks that I saw from this game. Speaking of Slasher, Slasher's an interesting case for another like little teachable moment here, which is that so in his last 20 S&D games last year, he averaged 6.15 or 6.2 kills per game. And he is at, what's his over under at? 6.5. So that sounds about the same. Those seem pretty even. So the one thing to watch out for with these really low kill players in search, which I define Austin as a very low engagement search player in general, is that the mean and the median, which is the number at which they perform higher than that number 50% of the time. That's not the average. The average is like the average of the data is not the same as what happens 50% of the time or more. His median is 5.5 kills. And so like there's a significant drop down from his median to his average number of kills per game, which basically means that when he does go off, he goes off a lot. And so it drags his average out a lot. But 50% of the time, he's getting less than 5.5 kills per game. And so like his chances of getting 5 kills are much higher than like you might think just by knowing, oh, well, his average kills are 6.2 per game in search. And so like I'm a big I've been a big proponent of unders in search on really low kill players because I think people underestimate how much of like the out of their outcomes are really close to like 1 or 2 kill. Like yeah, like there are only a few players in the league who could win a game and have 3 kills in search, and like I think Austin probably had most of them last year. Like and like so yeah, it's those types of players are interesting. I mean, obviously he's in a different situation, so it's going to be tough. And like it's kind of easy when you've got a BZ and Simp to just be like in search to just be like, all right, BZ, go get the first 2, and then I'll just post up. But yeah, I don't know. There are very like maybe 4 players I can think of that like if you told me they had 3 kills, I'd go, but did they win or lose? Like, and Austin was definitely one of those players. So yeah, I think that's an interesting under to consider is under 6.5 on Austin search.
Yep, I agree with that. Once again, you wrapped it up like at the end. What I was gonna say, it's about the pieces you kind of have around you. I feel like the team he was on last year compared to the team he's on this year, like you said, it's able to be like, all right, cool, simple, easy, go crazy, and I'll clean up. Now, main AI, you gotta be on your A game. You gotta free up that space for the young guns to sprint down and get into good positions to get them good kills. So, it could go either way. I'm kind of torn down the middle on that one. I could see it going over, but I could see it going under. All I know is, regardless of what direction that goes in, it's a breach dub,
Yes.
non-bias.
Yeah, I'd say that's just those are just simply facts.
No
Um,
pun intended. What else did you
yeah.
have?
Yeah. Uh, I think the last one that I had here is Simp Map 3. Right now his over-under's at 22.5 on Prize Picks. This is interesting to me because of yeah, man, I've just got lessons left and right here, like just like little tips or whatever. But like, so Abizi's also at 22.5 here. And so like basically they're saying they think Simp and Abizi have similar amounts of projected kills here. To me, I'm like, I look at the average kills that those two players had in control last year. Abizi was over 2 kills per game higher per game of control than Simp was last year. And so that's one data point. And then, okay, well, are there more kills to go around for Simp and Abizi? Okay, well, they swapped out Slasher for Draza. And I'm finding it hard to believe that I'm getting 2 extra kills per game out of Simp when I substitute Draza in for Slasher. So yeah, that's a spot where Simp feels like it's a soft line on the under here, or like favoring the under here, because how can you get to the point where or how can you get to the place where you're saying a BZ over under 22.5 and Simp over under 22.5, like when they didn't have the same amount of kills last year? They're implying they know something about the system that Atlanta's going to run. I don't buy it. That one just feels a little off to me. Like not necessarily that they just snagged the average from last year and slapped it in, just like a misread of the situation or something. I'm not really sure what to make of that. And maybe I'm missing something in their gameplay. But yeah, like when I look at their averages being so far apart, yeah, just on the whole, and they played on the same team, so I don't really have to worry about adjusting them for the maps and stuff. But like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm having a hard time getting to both of them being the same. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're listening and you're saying, well, it's because I think Abizi should be even higher. That's fair too. I see that they're together and I go, okay, so Simp must be lower. But you could think the opposite too. But yeah, to me, Draza coming in, I'm finding it hard to believe that he's giving up some of Austin's kill share and letting Simp have even more of the kills. But
Yeah, definitely a good point. I have nothing to add to that. That was galactic thinking.
yeah,
Definitely something to note. I don't know which side of that I would personally fall on, but it's definitely something I'm gonna have an eye on and kind of feel it out after the fact. I'm probably going to avoid it on like with Simp or Abizi in this situation and just kind of feel it out because I'm not going to go out feeling on the first one. I want to see their thought process on that and
yeah,
see where
good
it goes
point.
from there.
Yeah,
But
and
uh,
I sort of said, well, yeah,
no,
like I
no,
said, like to be careful on these over or the unders on guys that can have like pop off games. I mean, I would be remiss to not think about the fact that Simp is a guy who can just completely pop off in a game. I mean, yeah, he has a BZ holding it down, but yeah, there are plenty of games last year where Simp was the guy dropping 40, even though he had a relatively quiet statistical season last year. So I did warn against that earlier in the podcast. So I don't want to completely, yeah, like, oh yeah, Simp, yeah, he's a low outcome or like low variance player. Like, no, Simp could easily drop 40 in a control, or maybe not in a control, but he could drop 30 in a control easily. So maybe that makes me a little more scared too.
yeah, no, he's still that guy. He is
Yeah,
still always been that guy.
don't forget.
He's still that guy. Okay, last match of the day. Phenomenal match, in my
Yeah,
opinion. It's going to be a lot of viewership on this one. You have the reigning world champs, the New York Subliners, going against Optic Texas. The lines as of time of recording is New York minus 132 and Texas minus 102. In my opinion, this is what it should be for the Boston Atlanta game. But how do you feel about how those lines opened up?
yeah, it's very interesting. Like, I think it's like the Texas hype combined with the fact that like obviously New York was champs last year. Like they made a move that, uh, although I think is maybe questionable. Like they're, I mean, no doubt going to be a strong team again this year. I'm kind of surprised that they don't have Texas as like not big favorites, but like slight favorites here, and they actually kind of went the other way and favor New York. I kind of like that. I kind of think that's more where this game is, like more of a toss up. But yeah, I'm honestly surprised. I would have expected like with the way that this like Texas team was received in the offseason that like they were going to be minus 300 favorites in every game in week one or whatever. But yeah, I think this game is like fairly even. Yeah, you have a team that's really strong on paper versus a team who was really strong in the server last year, like a team that proved it even when on paper maybe they were not looking at, or like people would have written them off more. They were really strong when it counted, and then against a team that like, yeah, you basically just close your eyes and pick the dream team of new players that you could add in Pred and Kenny. And so like, I think this is fairly even. I think it'll be interesting to see how New York plays. I think Hydra was the over king last year. I mean, that guy just like he puts up kills like you would not believe, and like yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Sib slots into this roster. Priesta was a player who was a very low engagement player on average last year for New York, and because he was a role player for sure, and played that role really well. But we'll see how Sib slots in. This is, I think maybe I had a note here about Hydra over, but I sort of like your sentiment from the phase game. That's like I want to see how this system plays before I like do anything crazy here. Because yeah, is Hydra gonna be able to have 35% plus of the kill participation again this year, or is that a thing of the past now with like a player like Sib on your team instead? But yeah,
Yeah, I am a little questionable on how these odds are right now. Personally, I think New York should be um, favored a lot more than they are. I know they made a change for Zib, but I also think Optic Texas is going to be a team that has to find their footing as well. Obviously, you have two superstar SMGs with Shotzi and Pred, but I do think there's going to be a lot of clashing, and I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I still think they're going to have to try to figure out their role as an SMG together, and it's not gonna happen overnight. So I would not be surprised if we saw New York open up the season with a win. So I in this situation, I'd be very strong on New York, but I could be wrong. But that's just kind of how I think of it. But player wise, I know you touched on Hydra a little bit, but you also brought up Pred, who's the new addition to Optic Texas. What is jumping off the page to you about Pred?
Yeah, I think so. Like last year, we think about situations again. No new tip for this one, an oldie but a goodie here, and that like his control situation last year, they were a relatively poor team in control in general, and like he was on a poor team in general as well. So like now it's sort of the opposite. We see a player who was on a team that was maybe losing in quicker fashion more often to a team that, yeah, like we talked about, this game is like either close or yeah, maybe slightly favored to New York, but like is a closer game in general. So I like just across the board, I'd written down the control over under at 22 and a half. He had averaged 23, almost 23 and a half in control last year. And that was on a team that was losing games in quicker fashion last year. Like I think, I mean, it's easy to say if this game goes 3-2, he'll go over for sure. But like, yeah, I think even in some 3-1s, he's going over that more often than he maybe would have been last year. But yeah, I'm very hesitant to play many overs this week. It's like we've talked about some in general, but like if we're thinking about what my portfolio for the whole weekend is going to look like, I I'd be hesitant to be playing that many overs unless they're just absolute jammer spots. So yeah, like one note I made here, and it's an interesting stat, and then we'll go back to the caveat that Hardpoint probably will play slower this year. But last year, in the last 17 games that Hydra played in Hardpoint, he only went under his over-under for this game, 24 and a half, one time. And it was in the last game of the season when they beat Toronto 250 to 84. He went one kill under 24 and a half. But every other game in his last 17, he was over 24 and a half kills.
That
Which is
is
insane.
incredible.
Like, yeah, just absolutely shows up every single day and drops 25 plus. So, but yeah, I mean, I even with that, I'm like, oh, but the games are going to be short. But like, I mean, come on, man. Like, he was just, yeah, that's an insane. When I saw that, I was like, that cannot be real. So, and yeah, I don't know, maybe I had looked at it wrong, but like, it's insane to look at his past hardpoint games. And
I
that
love
and then
that.
it took an 84 point, 100 point club, and he still was only one kill short of where he needed to be. Like the game literally couldn't have been any shorter than it was, and he was still running it up. Like that's insane.
See, that's the type of stat that I love to hear. I'm the type of person that, like, I'm watching a college football game and it's raining out. I look up, previous games, what was the weather, and I saw that they've won 8 of their last, 10 games when it was raining outside. I'm like, yep, I'm in. And, like,
It's like the astrology for men or whatever. Like it's
yeah.
like, yeah, like all this team's won 20 of their last 21 when they fouled 18 or more times in the last game, and the coach's birthday was in January or whatever. And like, yeah, guys make fun of the zodiac or whatever, and then they're like, oh, but yeah, this is a sure thing. Like we're gonna bet my house on it.
Hey, it's true. But all in all, I mean, and I know you, share the same feeling. Like Call of Duty's back finally. We have some phenomenal games, and a phenomenal game, in my opinion. You can feel how you want to feel about it, but I think this year is going to be a great year. Granted, I say this every single year, but at the end of the day, we're back. Call of Duty's back. The ability to make money is back. It's always been there, but not in Call of Duty. But I'm just real fired up right now. Fired up for
Yeah.
the boys. Fired up to get to that first event, which is in Boston. Phenomenal venue, not biased. But yeah, no, I'm just very excited that Call of Duty's back.
Yes, we are, as the kids say, we are so back. We are
So
so back
back.
now. It was so over, but we are so back now. Yeah, no, I'm super excited, and like, yeah, I know we talked about this last match being a really good one, but yeah, I'm really excited for the Boston Atlanta game. Obviously, have some storylines with Slasher there as well, but also, yeah, it's the first game, and we talked about the history from last year and the same first game as last year. Like, I don't know, I think that people are going to be tuning in for that, and it's just going to be awesome. I'll be tuning in for sure, and like, yeah, it's just yeah, it's gonna be it'll be really cool. I think honestly the whole slate we have on Friday is just really nice. Like I think it's three like fairly evenly matched, three bangers, like just an awesome way to start off a season that's a long time coming.
Yep. Can't wait. All right, what else you have before I land this puppy? Anything else? Anything you want to
No,
say? Anything you want to tell me?
no, I think I've talked quite enough.
Okay, I feel that. Okay, well, that'll do it for the first episode of this season of Quick Fix Fantasy. You're going to be seeing us a lot more with a lot more golden nuggets from Dr. Doug over here and a lot more dropped R's in the words that I pronounce from me. But, we appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you next time.